Book 3, Chapter 54, continuing with verse 66. As a blade of grass has joints in the middle, so the nature of the sentient or individual soul is combined with two states of birth and death amidst it. The sentient soul is neither born nor dead at any time, but witnesses these two states as the passing shadows and apparitions in a dream and vision. The soul is nothing other than consciousness, which is never destroyed anywhere by anything. Say, what other thing is this soul called Purusha, besides consciousness itself? Tell me then, who and what are you calling dead today? Is consciousness subject to disease or death at any time and in any form? Truly, millions of living bodies are dying every day. But consciousness always remains imperishable. Consciousness never dies at the death of any living being, because the entire individual soul continues the same upon the death of everybody here. Therefore, the individual soul is nothing more than the principle which is conscious of its various desires, affections, and passions. It is not that principle to which men attribute the phases of life and death. Let's think a moment about what this means. What is consciousness? What is consciousness of the individual soul? What is the Jiva? All is consciousness. All is pure consciousness at its root, at its base. And that pure consciousness we know as Shiva. Shiva means pure. From that pure consciousness, Shiva, arises Krishna. Consciousness is the unmanifest, pure potential. Krishna is the manifest, pure potential, is the manifest of everything, not just potential. So given that we have Shiva and Krishna, Krishna being pure consciousness, or Shiva being pure consciousness, Krishna being the expression of the fullness of pure consciousness, then where is Jiva? Jiva is illusion. Jiva is the first illusion. Krishna is real. Krishna is not illusion. Shiva is pure consciousness. Pure consciousness is not illusion. It is real. Krishna is real because Krishna is the eternal expression of the fullness of pure consciousness. If something is eternal, unchanging, full and complete, that is the very definition of real. If something is temporary, fleeting, vanishing, coming and going, not stable, that is illusion. That is the very definition of Jiva. Jiva is illusion. On the most fundamental scale, we would have to say Jiva is the first illusion. Jiva is somehow a bubble in pure consciousness. Jiva is a fragment of Shiva. And so in 71, we read, the individual soul is nothing more than the principle which is conscious of its various desires, affections, and passions. So this bubble of consciousness is aware, because it is consciousness, and it is aware of the illusions that it has created within itself. Everything is cycles upon cycles. Once the illusion of Jiva appears, then Jiva replicates the illusion of itself in more illusion as various desires, affections, and passions. It is not that principle to which men attribute the phases of life and death. The phases of life and death are the emergence and destruction of the illusory elements created by the illusory Jiva. So there is none that dies, and no one is born at any time. It is this only living principle that continually revolves in the deep eddy of its desires. Considering the unreality of visible phenomena, there can be no desire for them in anyone. But the inner soul that is led by its egoism and believes them to be true is subject to death at the disappearance of phenomena. The recluse ascetic, flying from the fears of the world as foreign to his soul, and having none of its false desires rising in its breast, becomes liberated in this life and assimilated with the true one. Jiva becomes Shiva. Categories of death experience, the origin of illusion, chapter 55. Leela said, tell me, goddess, for edification of my knowledge, how does a living being come to die and is reborn in another form? The goddess replied, As the action of the heart ceases and the lungs blow and breathe no more, the current of vital airs is utterly stopped, and the living being loses its consciousness. But the intellectual soul, which has no rise or fall, remains ever the same as it abides in all moving and unmoving bodies, and in air, water, fire, and vacuum. So this unmoving intellectual soul, this is the silent witness. If we are Jiva, we are a bubble of consciousness. That means a bubble has boundaries, doesn't it? Those boundaries separated from the wholeness. And what are the boundaries of a bubble made of? Made of consciousness. Made of the substance in which it exists. So we're a bubble made of consciousness within consciousness. And the boundary of our bubble is created by a thought that I am separate, that I exist. That is the original mistake of the intellect. Now our purpose in self-realization is to rectify that mistake. And we have to rectify that mistake rather sequentially by rectifying the mistake that appears on the surface of our existence first. The karmic traces that are prominent, calling out for attention right now, these are the ones that we must balance right now. And when we balance these karmic traces, we have peeled one layer of the onion. And there's another one under there. And they're calling out to be balanced. And it continues and continues and continues until we balance that final layer, which is the boundary of our bubble that makes us Jiva, that makes us an existent being, separate. And when we balance that bubble, we are united once again. We no longer exist. We are pure consciousness. So this is our project. Step by step, we peel the layers of the onion. Verse 4. When the breathing, pulse, and motion of the body stop, it is said to be dead and is then called an inert corpse. The body being a dead carcass and the vital breath having mixed with the air, The soul is freed from the bonds of its desires. It flies to and remains in the mode of the discrete and self-existent soul. The discrete and self-existent soul. Still, we have a layer to peel back, don't we? The individual soul, which is illusory, called the animal spirit, Jiva, has its desires and is other than the Atman, soul. So what's the difference between individual soul, Jiva, and Atman? Atman is everything, pure consciousness. The water of pure consciousness, the ocean of pure consciousness. And Jiva is a bubble in that ocean. But unlike normal bubbles that we see, in which the interior of the bubble is empty air, the Jiva's interior is also consciousness. And the boundary of that bubble is just an illusion. It is a frequency. It is a thought. It is literally a thought in pure consciousness. Fractures pure consciousness in some sort of way, disturbs pure consciousness. And the response of pure consciousness to this thought or disturbance is manifestation. So when the thought is, I exist, pure consciousness obliges, and you exist. I exist. From that thought of I exist, I exist. That's how fragile and illusory our existence is. It all depends on that one thought, that I exist. If I didn't have that thought, would I exist? No. And where does that thought come from? Now, we would say that thought comes from the residual reverberation of the original thought. I exist. It's like echoing. And this echo of the original thought, I exist, is keeping the individual soul individual. We have to dampen the echoes. The echoes are the reverberations of the karmic trace of the original thought I exist, because nothing exists. All is one. So when we have the thought I exist, we have fractured the wholeness. We have taken ourselves out of the wholeness. And then we exist. And the result is struggle, misery, conflict, division, unhappiness, less than. It remains in its burial tomb under the same atmosphere as the soul of Padma, which you saw hovering about his tomb. Hence, such departed spirits are called ghosts of the dead, pretas. They have their desires and earthly propensities attached to them, just like the fragrance of the flower is concentrated in its pollen and thence diffused through the air. As animal souls are removed to other spheres, after their departure from this visible world, they view the very many scenes and sights that their desires present before them like visions in a dream. The soul continues to remember all its past adventures, even in its next state, and finds itself in a new body soon after the unconsciousness of death is over. The unconsciousness of death. That is the pralaya. That is the period of destruction. Every illusion goes through stages. Our universe goes through very discrete, defined, intellectually defined stages called yugas. But everything is going through these stages. Everything that is manifested or created begins its existence, its illusory separateness from the wholeness in a pure state. Sat Yuga. Then, because whatever it is that exists out of pure consciousness, everything that exists is consciousness. And consciousness has this one quality of being able to create. And it creates from awareness and of thought. But this individual jiva that exists in its illusory state of existence finds itself as an expression or an illusion of consciousness. The consciousness of the jiva is not even real. It is an illusion. It is a projection of that which is real, which is the silent witness, which has many names: Atman, Shiva, Krishna, the silent witness. That is the ocean of pure consciousness within which the bubble of jiva exists. So within that bubble entire universes emerge and are created and dissolve back into pure consciousness. From the perspective of the manifestation, we see that dissolving of the illusion is death. From the perspective of the silent witness, we see nothing has happened. The illusion has just ended. The illusion is confined to time and space. The illusion always has a lifespan. It always goes from beginning to end. The silent witness has no lifespan. It simply is. What appears an empty vacuum to others seems as a dusky cloud to the departed soul, enveloping the earth, sky, moon, and all other orbs within its bosom. Departed spirits are classed in 6 orders, as you will now hear from me. These are the great, greater, and greatest sinners, and likewise the 3 degrees of the virtuous. So here we have 6 qualities of illusion. These are again subdivided into 3 kinds, some belonging to one state and others composed of 2 or 3 states in the same individual soul. So what is the value of knowing this? It's like the value of knowing how the magician pulls the rabbit from the hat. It destroys the illusion. We know that the rabbit is there in a compartment within the hat. He's not pulling it from an empty hat. It's a false bottom in the hat. So when he shows us the inside of the hat, he's showing us more of the illusion. And once we identify the illusion, we can see it. We know it. We can only see it and know it from outside of it. If we're inside the illusion, if we are watching the magician from the audience, and we haven't been told about the false bottom in the hat, with the rabbit always there below the false bottom, waiting to be taken out, then what we see is magic. We see something unexpected happening. And this is how manifestation always works. When we're practicing our Sahasra Sirsha Brahma meditation, we're called upon to perform sanyama, the process of creation. And as we perform sanyama, we do what? We become established in samadhi first. Samadhi is pure being, silent witness. just pure silent witness. And then we purposefully fracture that pure silent witness with a thought, the sutra. And then we purposefully follow the reverberations of that sutra to its meaning. And then we let go. Because we do not create anything. All that is created is from pure consciousness in a reflex response to a thought. But this is delicate because if we have a thought and then we don't let go, what that means is we're continuing to think something. If we don't stop thinking, consciousness cannot respond. And so, what happens? Just thoughts. But if we are successful in stopping the thinking, doing nothing, being established as the silent witness after we've had that thought, then as the silent witness, we're surprised. We're always surprised, amazed, delighted as the pure consciousness literally creates a living illusion in our mind, which we call a waking-induced lucid dream. A very delicate process, and we have the opportunity to cultivate this process many, many times during every session of meditation. To perfect it. How do we perfect it? Whenever we have this thought of a sutra, Aham Brahmasmi, for example, I am Brahman. I am the totality, implying I am everything. Nothing exists but me. I am all that there is. I am all that exists. I even do not exist because I am pure consciousness. This is a very challenging thought to all the karmic traces, because every karmic trace is based on existence, illusion. So we're giving every karmic trace the antidote for its balancing. And hence, every karmic trace is responding as they only can by producing disturbance, conflict, and thoughts. So at some point, when they're all balanced, Aham Brahmasmi manifests. Some of the most sinful souls lose the memory of their past lives for a period of a whole year. They remain unconscious within themselves, like blocks of wood or stone. Rising after this time, they are doomed to suffer the endless torments of hell, which the hardness of their earthly mindedness has brought upon them. So what is hell? What are the endless torments of hell? That would be the most dense of the karmic traces. Heaven, the opposite, is when the karmic traces are extremely faint. So faint that the light of pure consciousness, Paramajyoti, Krishna's effulgence, shines through brightly. Hell is always darkness. Krishna's effulgence barely is able to penetrate in the depths of hell. That's why hell is so bad and so miserable, because it is the opposite of Paramajyoti. It is endless torments. Endless because no balancing of karmic traces there. Just endless cycling reverberations of the karmic traces. Then they pass into hundreds of births, leading from misery to misery. Or have a moment's respite from the pains in their short-lived prosperity amidst their dreaming journey through life. There are others who, after their numbness of death is over, come to suffer the unutterable torments of sluggishness in the state of unmoving trees, and others again who have undergone the torments of hell according to their inordinate desires in life, are brought to be reborn on earth in a variety of births in different forms. Gurudev said there are 4 million species in which one can be reborn on earth. Only one of them human. Only one of them at the outer fringes of hell that can be used to escape from these endless cycles of birth and death. Those of lesser crimes are made to feel the inertness of stones for some time, after the unconsciousness attending upon their death. These awakened to consciousness after some time, whether long or short, are made to return on earth to feel the evils of brutish and beastly lives. But the souls of the least sinful, soon after their death, come to assume some perfect human form in order to enjoy the fruits of their desire and reward on earth. These desires appear before the soul as dreams and awaken its reminiscence of the past as present at the moment. Again, the best and most virtuous souls, soon after death, come to find themselves in heavenly abodes by reason of their continued thoughts and speculations of them. Some among them are brought to enjoy the rewards of their actions in other spheres, from which they are sent back to the mortal world at the homes of the auspicious and best part of mankind. Those of moderate virtues are blown away by the atmospheric air upon the tops of trees and medicinal plants, where they rove about as protozoa after the unconsciousness of death is over. Being nourished here by the juices of fruits, they descend in the form of serum and enter into the hearts of men. From where they fall into the uterus in the form of virile semen, which is the cause of the body and life of other living beings. Thus the dead, after they recover from the collapse attending upon their death, make themselves into one of these states of living bodies according to their natural tendency. At first, they think themselves extinct. Then they come to feel resuscitated upon receiving offerings of the food made to their departed spirits. Then they fancy seeing the messengers of death with nooses in their hands come to fetch them to the realm of Yama, and they depart. There the righteous are carried in heavenly cars to the Nandana gardens of paradise, which they gain by their meritorious acts in life. But the sinful soul meets with icebergs and pitfalls, is tangled with thorns and iron pikes and bushes and brambles in its passage, as punishment for its sins. What does that mean? Punishment for its sins. These karmic traces expressing themselves are pure misery. That's what made a karmic trace in the first place. It was an act that separated from the divine. And when you make that separation, it's always miserable. Those of the middling class have a clear and paved passage with soft grassy pathways, shaded by cooling trees and supplied with spring waters on both sides of them. On its arrival there, the soul reflects within itself that here am I, and yonder is Yama, the Lord of Death. The other is the judge of our actions, Chitragupta, and this is his judgment given on my behalf. In this manner also, the great world appears to everyone as in a dream, and so the nature and manner of all things present themselves before every soul.